Cowardice asks, the question, is it safe? Expediency asks, the question, is it politic? Vanity asks, the question, is it popular? But conscience asks, the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Joe, it's Scotty, and here we are, and 28th of October, 2023. Welcome, and I got to tell you, first off and foremost, apologies for the extended time off, but man, craziness happens, and when it does, you must respond accordingly.
Exactly.
Right. Sometimes you got to sacrifice it. I'll tell you this, though. We're going to be doing more stuff because the world's getting crazy, and well, it just means that we're going to have to do some more educating as to why that is. You know.
Yes. Since we've been off air, there have been a few. Can we just say situations that have arisen globally?
Like, you get personally kicked in the stones. It doesn't matter because on a global scale, we're all getting kicked in the stones too. It's like there's just level of stone kicking. And it's really getting painful, dude. For all you out there that don't like getting kicked in the stones, you should all know and feel it. So tonight we're going to kind of go into the geopolitical situation and then a historical walk as far as why this is all happening and the pain. There is so much pain built up around this region. And of course, everybody's going to latch on a prophecy because of course it's pretty crazy, but there's also some pretty significant fulfillments that are going on. And I call them fulfillments only because, they kind of fit the description. It's always the rear view mirror when it comes to that kind of stuff. You're always looking in the rear view mirror. And that's when you understand, like, holy crap, what I just saw was like serious. It's important. You don't really see it in the moment. You can't really predict it's going to happen. A lot of people try to do it, but it's kind of like our instinct as humans to survive. So you need accurate information, not narratives, not political crap. So that's what we're going to try to give you tonight. And the history is going to mess you up a little bit because this history's been scrubbed over and over and over and over. And it has to do with the programming and the divide and conquer tactics that are being used by these uber ultra multi-generational rich bitches. And I'm talking about like the Rothschilds they're one of the major factors in this. Of course, there's many others, but they're the ones that have had their hands in it the longest and have the most interest in it. And what you're going to come to find out is that the things that have been labeled conspiracy theory or, oh, they're just making it up, or, oh, they're just racist, or they're anti-Semitic, or anything else, which, by the way, is an absolute, people don't even know what the word means, and they're using it. You know?
Right.
That's the craziness. It's anything anti, like, Arab, Middle Eastern. Anti-Semitic is that entire region. So,
exactly.
You can be anti-Semitic if you hate the Arabs, if you hate the Jews, if you hate the Turks, if you hate the Sunnis, you know, it doesn't matter who the hell it is, you're anti-Semitic. So if you take a side in this, you're anti-Semitic. We're all anti-Semitic, I guess, in a way then. It's crazy. So stop. That's number one. Stop that crap. It's don't believe it when you hear it. When you do, people aren't even using it in the correct context or the way it's supposed to be used.
Oh, there are so many things that have been twisted and the definitions, rebranded to muddy the waters and confuse everybody. And like you said, the terms have been sort of hijacked and changed in order to fit a narrative that it's wild. And when we get more into it, we'll have to just clarify a lot of these things for people because people don't know they've been.
That's the intent. And like our good friend Kristan Harris, who's time and time again have done countless broadcasts on the meaning of words. I mean, you might think that's dry stuff, but man, is it powerful. And you can see it. You can see the power of that being labeled an anti-Semite in this particular time and place it's really bad when labels have that much power. But it just goes to show you the power of words. And a lot of people take that for granted, or they don't appreciate the power of words. We call it in medieval times, often they'd call it spell casting because it would change people's behavior in such a dramatic way.
Why do you think it's called spell? Why do you think it's called spelling? Because you're casting a spell in a way.
With a wand or a feather or a pen, it doesn't matter what the hell you do, Ask Johnny King and his assless chaps and all that stuff. It doesn't matter, So tonight, that's kind of what we're going to do. I want to get the party started with current events because current events are important. And so why don't you take us through what's going on right now? And more importantly, and I want to say this too, you can kind of see how things are starting to shape up. And the world itself is very much positioned in such a way as it was pre-World War I, like where you had all of these alliances that made people duty bound to respond if they were attacked, if another country was attacked. NATO being one of the biggest ones. Now, how do you, Turkey, being a NATO country, how do you go ahead and declare war on Israel? And then what happens then when you get attacked? And then we have to respond? And whose side are we on? And what's going to happen? So you see, it's not as cut and dry as black and white as 1917 or 1914, 1915 was. It's a lot more complex, this world, this time around.
Exactly.
So there's no telling how that's going to go. So why don't you take us through that and tell us where we're at?
Okay, so to somewhat summarize the current state, the situation that we're in, right? So we had Hamas, launch this incredibly complex and brazen attack on Israel, right? And they've taken a bunch of hostages. They attacked that music festival. It was a very sophisticated attack that really caught Israel off guard. And, they were flying in on paragliders and, fired thousands of rockets because, hey, the Iron Dome can only handle so much. And once you overwhelm something, stuff's going to get through. It doesn't matter how sophisticated your technology is, things can be overwhelmed. And so everyone's like, well, how could this happen? How could Israel, sustain? Because it was, kind of was I would say an embarrassing kind of situation for Israel to kind of be caught off guard like that on by Hamas. And so a lot of what led up to this, I think, is pretty interesting, where Hamas had taken this position to where it appeared that they were kind of cooperating with Israel and appearing to be like more moderate and allow like they were agreeing to a lot of the terms that Israel had negotiated with. They appeared to be in a cooperative sort of stance, and I think Israel got complacent, and they thought, well, look, hey, they're cooperating. There's, of course, every once in a while you'd have a rocket fired here and there or whatever, and they,
I just want to put it in the context too, just so you know, and for the benefit of the listeners, back in the 90s when I was in the Navy, I did exercises with the Israeli Navy, and I'll tell you what, they were the most squared away. Everybody had a minimum 2-year mandate they had to do in the military. Everybody kind of, it wasn't so much a pride thing. It's just, it was a necessity. And they all knew it, and they were very tight-lipped on everything. You couldn't say anything about anything you were doing inside Israel at all, or, you could only say that, well, I'm here to participate in this exercise, and that's it. And you couldn't give any details. But, I mean, when it comes to execution, they were right on target. Mm-hmm. So it surprises me that
they were caught off guard like that.
But to me, it's almost like, was it on purpose? You're telling me that they didn't know?
Well, I'll get into that, and I'll explain a little more of how this complex situation unfolded, because it's not, this is just one piece of the puzzle that I'm going to be putting together here. Right. So you have Hamas, in this situation to where it appeared that they were cooperating. I mean, Israel was actually allowing Palestinians to come in and work in the country and go back and forth, and there seemed to be some level of like, okay, we can kind of work, and of course you're going to have your very radical, your very radical ones that every once in a while will try to do something or whatever, but as a whole, things were somewhat like, okay,
somewhat working, right? Yeah, and by the way, a lot of push about the walls and everything like that. A lot of protest over it. A lot saying that it was trying to isolate the Palestinians. But if you take a look at it, all it is a group of people protecting their interest. And they had the resources, and they built the wall. It ain't no different than our southern border. We'll just put it that way. And if you're trying to maintain your sovereignty in that way, then you have to do it. If you're not going to have open borders, you got to have some way to police your border. And Israel does not have a lot of people, and they don't have limitless resources. That's why they have conscription, basically.
Right.
So they have to have this posture because they're surrounded by threats and have been for some time. Now, if the Palestinians had resources and they had sovereignty, they would probably do the same thing. Exactly. And their ancestors did many times. So, so for people to vilify that, all it is a strategy. And they were doing it, and they were trying to make it work, and doing a pretty good job of it, to where the West Bank and where the Gaza Strip were, poverty, it was bad, poverty-stricken, but things were going in another direction. They were going in a slow but positive direction.
Right. Like I said, they were allowing Palestinians to come and work in Israel and go, kind of, move back and forth and whatnot. And, I'm sure these people were kind of, cherry picked and screened and whatnot, but hey, they were at least, there was some level of cooperation back and forth. Right. So you have that. And this was a long game sort of strategy that Hamas was playing, because what they were doing was they were gradually lulling Israel into a state of complacency and comfort. And they were willing, you know, they were
tunnels and stocking them full of
right. While what they were really doing was stockpiling. You're right. They were stockpiling, and they were preparing, you know, for this attack. But see, this is only one piece of the puzzle, because now we've got to talk about another piece of the puzzle, which is a lot of the political turmoil that was occurring in Israel at the time of this attack, well, and leading up to this attack, right? So what you had was this issue that was going on where the judicial branch, or I guess you could, because Israel's system is not really set up like the U.S.
They have a different Supreme Court, but it's a different version of it. But yes,
yeah, and then their judicial branch, or their Congress or legislature, whatever you want to call it, Parliament, the Knesset. Yeah, the Knesset. They don't have the checks and balances that the U.S. has, and you know, obviously you can debate whether our checks and balances are working, but hey, you know, whatever. In principle, right? They don't have the checks and balances that the U.S. has, and in recent times, what you would consider their Supreme Court, or their judicial branch, has been attempting to gain a little more influence and power in order to keep the Knesset in check, right?
Right.
And so let's try to look at this through the lens of, say, a U.S., right?
Right.
So here in the U.S., our Supreme Court right now, at least right now, is viewed as being a quote unquote right-leaning Supreme Court, right? And in Israel, their Supreme Court, or their judicial branch, is viewed as being left-leaning,
right,
or more liberal. Right. And so their judicial branch, Supreme Court, whatever you want to call it, they have sort of taken a stance on a lot of human rights violations and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
That may be occurring against Palestinians and everything like that. So their judicial branch is kind of seen as a left wing, you know.
Yeah, very much kind of like what we see over here. It's a little woke. Let's just call it that. It's like woke in their regional sense.
Yes, in their sort of terms, they're seen as kind of like woke.
Right.
And so Netanyahu, you know, and the Knesset have recently made some moves to sort of strip the judicial branch of their government of a lot of their powers, right? To sort of cut a lot of their ability to do things there. And because they don't really have those checks and balances, you know, established, they can pretty much do that, you know. So I believe they passed some laws.
They passed a law. And there was huge protest as a result of it.
Yes. So they kind of neutered the judicial branch over there.
Yep.
People got very upset about it because they saw it as, oh wow, this is the executive branch kind of going for a big power grab here, and you know, that's not cool. And so you had a lot of protests going on in Israel, you know, protesting against this. You had a lot of, you know, like boycott sort of action going on. And a very interesting thing is that you had a lot of, well, because everybody is basically conscripted, you know, their citizens are conscripted, as a show of protest or whatever, a lot of people in the military were like, you know what, We're not going to show up for work,
That's right.
in protest of all this. And so now
Boy,
you
does
have this
that
situation
set
where,
up a ripe little old stage.
yes,
doesn't it?
right. So now you have the situation where Hamas has kind of lulled Israel into a state of complacency. You
But on the
have
flip
a lot
side,
of
now they're caught with their pants down because now you're short people.
right.
Expertise in certain areas might be lacking.
And this plays a major role in the attack because
I'm sure Hamas was salivating like, oh, look at them, they're down. Ash.
right, and it also occurred on a Jewish. This is another piece of the puzzle. This occurred on a Jewish holiday when a lot of people were out on vacation, a lot of people were gone, and so you have that.
Right.
Along with the people that were like, you know what, I'm not even showing up because of all this, crap going on, as a form of protest.
Right.
And so when Hamas launched this attack, right, a lot of these bases that they took over, these outposts that were just across the board, they
Right.
were only being manned by skeleton crews of people.
Right.
Because nobody was there, and because people were like, how are a couple ragtag terrorists taking over entire military bases? Well, it's because nobody was there. There was only like 2 or 3 people, or I don't know, a very, very small number of people that were actually manning these.
You're already short, and then it's a holiday.
Right.
Think about it, High Sabbath, if I remember right, and that's when they pull the trigger.
So yeah, it was the perfect storm. It was the
Yeah, but Hamas waited for the right moment. They didn't
exactly
have it right then, but they did because they saw an opportunity. They
right.
saw
It
an
was the
opportunity.
perfect. It was the perfect. The all of the ingredients were there for them to be able to pull off something big, and they did it.
No, that's
Now
right.
the question is, okay, so we know that Israel has the Mossad, right?
Sure.
What you would, a lot of people consider probably one of the best intelligence agencies in the world. It's akin basically to our CIA, and probably better in a lot of ways than our CIA, as far as intelligence gathering and whatnot. So then it becomes a question of, okay, how did they not see this coming? What was this big intelligence failure?
How did
right?
3 wings of defense allow the Pentagon to get hit on 9/11?
Right. So,
Just saying.
now we have to start talking about, was there knowledge? Did they actually know that this attack may have been happening? And there's a lot of
They had intel,
chatter about
much like Roosevelt or Pearl Harbor, who had intel that the Japanese were planning to attack, but chose to not act on it. And when he did, and they attacked, now you had United States support for entry into World War II, whereas before, your population wouldn't support it.
right. So you had a lot of this, chatter and talk about, hey, Egypt warned Israel that, hey, something might be happening. Something's going on. Y'all might need to be
smuggling all this stuff in, mostly through the Egyptian side into the tunnels.
Right.
And through
so
Syria.
if there was foreknowledge of this and it was, quote unquote, allowed to happen,
It was their Pearl Harbor moment, maybe.
well, don't you remember the talking point that was put out pretty much right from the get-go was Israel saying, hey, this is our 9/11. Remember they said that?
Yeah. Oh no, I know.
Word.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
There's a reason why they say this stuff, folks. I mean, it's
Yes.
imperative to understand that the words are powerful.
right. So you have Netanyahu, right? And
Yep.
he's dealing with a lot of issues. You have these
Oh,
protests.
he's got legal issues out
and
the
then
ass, everything
he's got
else.
yes legal issues going on. His power there was in jeopardy, right?
In jeopardy, not anymore. Not anymore.
Right now,
Now they're on a war footing.
now they're on a war footing, and you have, you know, emergency powers and whatnot.
But this is exactly, folks, this is exactly what you have to see. So you have a Netanyahu who's a war hawk, always has been, and he has for many years professed support for pushing more and more settlements into Gaza and the West Bank. Been doing it for a long time. This was not only the perfect opportunity for him, just as it was Hamas. This is all playing out exactly the way, in my humble opinion, it's supposed to at this point. And you have to understand, and I want everybody to look at the similarities that are happening. For those that are my age, you might remember, say like Bugs Bunny, right? You saw Bugs Bunny. How many episodes talked about buying war bonds? And you see propaganda injected into it. Disney was another one, took millions of dollars and created untold amount of propaganda. This was in the 1930s and 40s, right? When technology didn't exist to create a social credit system or a censorship complex of unbelievable proportions, and then artificial intelligence on top of that to boot. But you can see what happened during that time. And this is very, very important to understand. This is one of those historical markers that and parallels that you have to see and understand why it could happen again, but only now put it in a 21st century perspective. And couple that with what we know to be the plans of things like the World Monetary Fund and all these others professing for a one world economy and, you know, the New World Order and one world government, blah, 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 blah.
I also have to throw in another piece of the puzzle too.
Okay.
Because I believe this also plays a major role. You know, there's a lot of moving parts to this. You can't just chalk this down to like one or two things. There was a lot of things that were all sort of converging to create this situation.
That's right.
So you also had Saudi Arabia negotiating and starting to move on normalizing relations with Israel, which would have been a huge ordeal. That would have been a big deal for the Middle East, right?
That's right.
Now Hamas all of a sudden sees this as a oh no, because if all of a sudden you have Saudi Arabia essentially aligning itself with Israel and normalizing relations with Israel.
That's huge for the entire Arab world. That right there is that's earth-shattering.
Right. And that's a big oh crap moment for Hamas and Iran, right? Because Iran and Saudi Arabia do not get along.
No, and Iraq isn't doing so good with them either right now, because Iraq is more aligning itself with Iran. So you can kind of see how these
yes. So this kind of starts to play on the, you know, more larger chessboard geopolitical scale here, because
but let me say one more thing too, that as you say, you can't look at it from the standpoint that Americans can look at it and say, well, you know, since 1776, we've fought many. No,
right.
This goes back to the beginning of time, of creation, of this iteration of man. This shit is so old and so ingrained in human history.
I mean, because why are
you just it really pisses me off that we Americanize that. It's bad.
Right. Exactly. Right, because I mean all you got to do to look at the bad blood between Saudi Arabia and Iran is the bad blood that has existed between the Sunnis and the Shiites the Sunnis and the Shiites for
millennia.
Yeah, exactly. So, this goes farther back than, like you said, we can't just look at this through the lens of our very small sort of time frame that the United States has existed. This is a long-standing thing that has been occurring. So,
and here's the thing: the control freaks know this, right? They know that people have short memories. Even in the long game, it's short. You basically, in one generation, can totally wipe out and change a society. If you really want to do it, you can do it in one generation. And we've seen it. We've seen it happen. We're watching it before our very eyes. So you have to understand, the control freaks know this. So because they know this, you need to understand and think like that too. And when you see it happening, you have to say something. And here's the problem. The problem is so many people are afraid to act because one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, right? And it can cascade. And in today's world, that can be very bad because there's a lot of technology out there that can do very bad things to a lot of people. So I get it.
Yeah. So because of this sort of major major allegiance that could have been playing out between Israel and Saudi Arabia, I think Iran and Hamas, because Hamas is backed by Iran, they're that's their major funder and supplier of, they were in panic mode, and they felt the need, they had to do something to undermine this potential allegiance between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think they succeeded, because after the attack, obviously Israel responds, and then now there's pressure on the greater Arab world in general, even whether you're Shiite or Muslim, to support your Arab brothers against the Jewish
and daughters of Ishmael, right? And
right,
you can
right.
go back and say that they're all sons and daughters of Abraham too, but
well, yeah, because it's all based off of Abrahamic, yeah. So now, Saudi Arabia is like, well, we're going to put these talks and a lot of this on hold, and they, Hamas and Iran kind of succeeded in stopping that.
They totally derailed it big time, and now
they
derailed pressure too. And you got to remember, Qatar's the United States puppet in the Middle East. How long can they continue that before they're pressured into not and choosing a side? Do you see? So you're talking about really ancient, biblical type ancient struggles that have now reemerged and are taking center stage. And Ukraine, unfortunately, will suffer as a result of it, because that funding ain't going anywhere anymore. And quite frankly, we can't be doing that.
It should have never been going there to begin with.
Never been happening in the first place,
Right.
So that is good, Human suffering is never good. But in terms of the United States, we cannot afford to be doing that kind of crap, and you cannot buy into the narrative that's being sold to you, because it's totally not true. It's not
true. Zelensky has got to be absolutely livid that he's no longer the star of the show anymore.
Oh my God. He survived a lot longer than a 72-hour cycle. So you got that. Now I want to bring up something that Tucker Carlson said in a speech that he did, and he posted it recently on X, but I pulled out some points. And he began laying out a significant disconnect between Washington, D.C. and then us, Americans. And he was highlighting how inflation and housing accessibility, now out of reach for so many, is really bringing about a hostile environment and a lot of animosity towards the government. And he said, thanks to political decisions such as draining the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the nation has been left vulnerable to deeper economic shocks. The public sentiment, particularly in rural areas, echoes this anticipation of a looming financial crisis, making the societal divide even more palatable. He says, if something really dramatic in your country happens, like young people can't get married, or buy houses or have any hope for a future that approaches the middle class upbringing they had, then you got a huge problem. And somebody should be responding to that. This is one thing Americans are not used to, is being poor. But what if we ran out of money at the very same moment that American society is more fractured? Our social fabric is in tatters, and we've left it in millions upon millions of people who have no affinity to the United States. If your economy is like on the brink of collapse, he says, if your country is literally bankrupt, somebody would say that, and if food inflation gets so crazy that people are actually complaining about it, it doesn't make me an expert on the people or anything, but I do live among people who aren't rich, and they're like legit upset about what groceries cost. And he's right. He's right. So we're feeling it here. And then you have the East German Stasi tactics, right? So you have unparalleled, as any point in our history, surveillance, control over just about everything. And it erodes trust in government and in your institutions when you start to have that kind of infrastructure bear down on you. Like when they boot your car because you didn't pay your property tax on your car, and they have these contractors that go around with the license plate readers and boot your car. And bing, oh, there's one, boop, boot. Well, how's a guy supposed to pay off his back taxes if you take his transportation away? Doesn't make any sense. Is that the real purpose? Or is it to enslave? You answer that, not me. I'm just saying. This infrastructure is in place for a reason. Again, nobody has any frame of reference to World War II. I'm only highlighting that because that was the last time where you saw rationing on a scale like you're going to see again if this foments into more than a regional conflict or the United States gets pulled in. Why?
It's
because
a cycle.
You have to redo your entire supply chain and go on a war footing. And that means that you're not making a lot of the goods that you used to make, because those time and resources, all that stuff is going into making weapons and planes and everything else. So understand that. Like the whole rationing thing. Oh, could you see what happens today? Did you see what happened when the EBT system went down for like 8 hours? It was nuts. So That's crazy. Now, he brought up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That's important. Why? Because over the last 6 months, Biden drained over 180 million barrels out of it, and it's really down to about 20 days worth of fuel if you don't direct it to a war effort. And of course it would. So oilprice.com just wrote a piece. Emergency oil meeting discusses potential for diesel outages, meaning that the EU is now talking about supply shocks stemming between this. And there's a very good possibility that we could be seeing queues or backlogs for diesel fuel. Now, you might not think that that's really important, but when the backbone of a lot of your supply chain, getting things to and from places, use diesel, that's a big issue. It's a big
Most
issue.
heavy equipment and infrastructure and all of that, trucking, shipping, cargo ships and everything, they run on diesel.
Which will, of course, spawn a reaction, right? Because now it's the pendulum swings, whoop, and they're going to say, ooh, what an opportunity to electrify the country. So we're going to eliminate our dependence on it because we're going to give grants to all the people that donated to that really, really are doing great research and are saving the planet. And so billions of dollars is going to flow, well, whatever. By that time, inflation, it'll be like quadrillions of dollars because, I mean, the dollar's not worth crap anymore. Anybody who goes to the grocery store, you know that, or fill up your car or anything else. It is absolutely insane. People are stretched to the limit, and they have no idea that if this goes the way that it could go, and it will probably because they're going to want it to go this way, the type of controls that are going to be put in place is going to be so 1984-esque, you won't even understand. I mean, you're talking about redistributing labor and people and everything else. They will have that type of power in that scenario, and they did during World War II. It's just now you have the technology to help support that control mechanism. And it's
right.
It's scary. It's scary. And like I said, with the quadrillions of dollars, Wall Street is bracing for a $1.5 trillion. The Fed is to, well, let's put it this way. The Treasury needs to borrow $1.5 trillion between now and the end of quarter one, fiscal year 24, just to fund the government. Now, they just last month did $1 trillion. And that was the reason why you saw interest rates start to really go up. Mortgages hit the 8% level. And you look at the 10-year, it's like 5%. Hasn't been that since 2000. So as the government floods the markets with debt, it makes that debt more unattractive because there's so much of it out there. And the government's going to have to pay a higher interest rate to get that debt bought and fill the coffers. So consider that as another downside, I guess you could say, to this, because money doesn't, I mean, you can print it, but for so long. And then as we've seen, it doesn't do well in the long run. And
well, look, look, this is something that we started talking about way back, all the way when that little situation that came out of Wuhan started taking place, and everything got shut down, and the economy started going to poo-poo, right?
Yep.
And things started, not looking so good. And, history has a very interesting tendency of repeating itself. And the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And, you always see these sort of economic collapses and economic downturns, and then when they start turning into global economic issues where everything starts tanking and going downhill, usually, historically, you usually have economic warfare followed by hot warfare. And
boy, that's been happening very much so here recently.
Right. So if you look at this from a historical standpoint, we're heading into that juncture, that time frame when things start to move from economic hardships to, okay, well, what do we got to do?
And with absolutely no capacity, no manufacturing capacity. I mean, if you take a look, let me just give you an example, like shipbuilding. The Chinese can build 10 ships to our one. And I think we can put out maybe 7 a year right now is what our shipyards could possibly put out. And they could put out like 70 a year. That's how crazy. Now, what kind of ships are they? Well, yeah. Could we probably dominate a few? Sure. But it's just like everything else. You can overwhelm them with numbers, and they will, if it comes down to it. But it's just one example of how those regional partnerships really, really do have a significant role in the outcome of these things. You know, it's very, very crazy.
It
Oh, yeah?
very
Oh, great.
interesting because because I mean look at the economic situation during the 1930s,
Yep.
right? And oh gee, what ended up happening, you know, during the late 1930s? You know,
Yep. And the country was in dire straits. So what do? Have a good war. Wars are good for the economy. Wars are good to
right.
yeah.
And after World War II, a new global order was sort of established.
That's right.
Everything was, you know, you had the fall of monarchies pretty much and the rise of the secular state. You know, the you had a whole global shift in superpowers where the United States became the global superpower. The United States and Russia, you know, became the two dominant superpowers in the globe, and
Right.
you know, an entire, you know, paradigm shift of how things operated after that war. And because of the war, you had an economic explosion, an economic boom. You know, the United
Right.
States was doing fantastic after
Right.
the war.
On
You
the
know,
one hand, and on the other hand, though, we were almost bankrupt because we did have
well,
a
right,
lot of debt that we had to pay off. Right. So here's another perspective too. Post World War II, when we had to pay the debt down, the top tier tax rate was 90%. 90%. So think about that for a second. The top tier tax rate being 90%, you're going to see stuff like that happen. And the modus operandi, there's going to be a couple of things that you're going to see as a way to fund things. There are revenue streams that are not necessarily available to them right now, but very well could be in a wartime situation. The main one being 401ks. That is a serious, serious treasure trove that they have been salivating to get their hands on, because the debt will eventually become a big problem if they don't solve it.
right. And I mean, in general, for the average person, the economy was great, and
Right.
people could.
Oh no,
know,
but their purchasing power. That's what's important. The important thing was how far did the dollar get them? Where in 1955 you could get so much farther with $5 than you could today. Well, of course, you know,
and
you could
obviously
afford that.
we weren't going to be able to ride that gravy train forever.
No.
And right. And now the gravy train is running dry, and and we're no longer.
50s were when the greatest generation comes home, and really because of what they've been through, we saw a time of great prosperity, of family values, of accountability, of all of that, because of what they suffered through and what they went through. No different than the founding fathers or anybody else that suffered that trauma, and the outcome of that trauma was, wow, do we got to right the ship? Holy crap, this is terrible, you know? And they tried.
What's the saying? It's like hard times breed strong men, men bring easy times breed weak men bring hard times, and then the cycle continues.
Cycle reset. Yeah.
So we're in that part of the cycle where it's easy times breed weak men, and we're in the weak men breed hard times.
Yeah,
and
this time, folks, it's going to be crazy. So hour number 2, I'm going to take you on a little journey, and we're going to go back in time a little bit. And I'm just going to let the newspapers tell you a few things. And it's no different than the Smithsonian wiping the slate clean with giants. You know, whether you could go back and look at 19th century articles on, holy crap, we found this 10-foot skeleton in this burial mound in Ohio, and it's in the newspaper, and they're taking pictures with it and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. It's scrubbed. Why? You know, these burial mounds are all over the world. They're all over the place. Pyramids, things like that, yada, yada. Why? Because they tell a story. The other thing in hour number 2 we're going to get into is the acknowledgement of Noah's Ark being real and they found it. So we'll get into who found it, when, and what the real Noah's Ark is. They're talking about the right Noah's Ark, but they're giving no credit to the guy that actually did the work to figure it out. And we're going to talk about that and his other discoveries too, so you could go on your own journey and see, holy crap, this stuff is real. And, well, we got to be doing more to understand that and understand where we are historically relative to that.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. And that's
because
not to say the world's going to end tomorrow, because it may not. But I can tell you that the time leading up, everybody's like, oh man, I wish Jesus would come back tomorrow. Yeah. Well, me too in a way, but unfortunately, if I understand it right, the years prior to him coming back are not going to be too rosy. As a matter of fact, it's kind of written that there has never been a time on this planet as bad as it's going to be before that happens. And so I'm not exactly trying to rush it in any way, shape, or form, nor am I putting any energy out there to push it along on one hand. But on the other hand, there's a part of me that says, come on, man, just get over with already.
Look,
man,
before that happens, I think we're going to be living in the world of Diablo 4.
I tell you what, man, I can't wait. I can't wait. And, I can't wait for that. If that's the way it's going to be, I'll take my chances, but in all honesty, man, a lot of people say that, well, I wish it would just get, and I feel it, because life's very, very not the way that many of us, especially people my age, Generation X, would have expected it to come out, the outcome, and quite frankly, the
21st century isn't living up to your expectations, Joe.
No, and unfortunately, I see where this is going and where they're pushing it, and I also see the diverging systems that are coming out, and then they're going to converge. And really, it boils down to this: do you want an AI-driven society that manages everything and basically tells you how to live, what to do, where to go, resource management? Or do you want the original system? And you're going to have two diverging paths. And that's what's going to end up being tried to force it. It's going to be forced down a lot of people's throats. Why? Because they won't have a choice. It's going to be, we have to survive. That's what it's going to end up being. And it's going to be 1984 or Brave New World like you've never. And I can't believe it, Scotty. As much as they try, I mean, they put it out. It was required reading in high school, for Christ's sake. And are you kidding me? Brave New World here now. We're seeing it.
It was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a warning, not a operations manual, right?
And I can't imagine that these control freaks want to radiate the planet. So I'm not sold on that. However, what might it happen? I don't know. I can't live my life like that.
And now, with a lot of this turmoil going on, geopolitically and all of that, I'm starting to see a lot of people actually throwing out the idea of, well, hey, maybe we need AI politicians and AI leaders to run our countries, because
AI judges that are impartial.
AI will think logically and won't start wars unlike us flawed human beings that like to start wars. AI can run things in a nice, peaceful manner and give us that lovely utopia that we all want.
Yeah, right. I don't know, man. All I can say is I see what we're barreling to. I can see the definitely. Don't let a crisis go to waste type of thing really turn its ugly head, and just like Bill said, until it turns to hell. Yeah. Absolutely. And it will, because you know why? It's made by humans.
Until it turns into Skynet, more likely.
Skynet too. It doesn't matter. It's not gonna be good. We'll just put it that way.
Sorry,
because
Dave.
systems are
I can't let you do that, Dave.
But humanity, it's going to be so bad that humanity's going to look for a savior, right? And this is where the whole Antichrist thing comes in. And I believe it's AI. I believe that it's general intelligence. And when you hear general intelligence is here, and that they, openly admit it, that I believe is the Antichrist power the Bible refers to. Not a man. It may be referred to as a man, but it's not going to be a human. That's for sure. It's going to be something that people go to, because you have to remember, Antichrist doesn't mean opposite of. Antichrist means in place of. And people will be replacing their prayers with the answers from the AI, no different than when they go to it for their diagnoses for a medical condition, because it's better than the human doctors now.
Yeah, well,
right?
look at how many people. Yeah, look at how many people go and ask ChatGPT for the answers to everything right now. And yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah.
I do it, so I totally get it. I totally get it. I'm just saying that we there's we're here. We're barreling into it here now, so it's important to understand. But it's also important that when they tell you, oh, there's these conspiracy theorists and all that, well, I'm going to use history's own words to prove to you that what you're seeing has been a very long time in the making, that this latest iteration, or the scorn that the Arab world feels, has nothing to do with the current inhabitants of Israel. They are just human beings like you and me.
Right.
But there were things that happened that encroached on the sovereignty of people that was done by the control freaks. And even to this day, they're very proud of it. So I'll show you that, so that when they call you a conspiracy theorist, you can go right to the horse's mouth and tell them exactly where you learned it. And I don't know what else to say outside of, we need a lot more strong men in the country and in the world to stand up to these control freaks and tell them that we won't participate, because none of this can happen, folks, without us. Remember that. And all we have to do is just cross our arms and do nothing. That's all we got to do. Do it for 2 weeks. It'll change the world. We'll be right back. Hour number 2 on the way. You're watching the Freedom Link on KGRADB.com.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money-back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Well, welcome back to our number 2 of the Freedom Link on KGRADB.com. Joe Joseph, Scotty Lopez, and we're going to get into the history now. As we talked about the geopolitical situation, hour number 1, about Israel, where we kind of see this going. Now you have to understand the anger. I want you to understand the anger. The people that are like pro-Palestine and all that, the hippies and all these others that think they know. Look, I'm sure they're in touch with their humanity. I get it. Anybody that is, don't want to see war. You don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see that happen. But in human history, it's inevitable. We just, for some reason, this is our way. You know.
You see, look on both sides. You see people on both sides taking a position without having any sort of actual historical
context,
knowledge or context of anything. So they're taking a side without actually knowing like why they're taking a side or understanding any of the nuance and complexity of it.
Right.
You know. They're just told on Twitter, hey, this side bad, this side good,
right?
You know, and so, yeah.
So anyway, I want people to understand where this comes from and why there's so much anger in the Arab world, especially over this. And it goes back, pretty much to the late 19th century. And it kind of all starts with Baron Edmund de Rothschild, and he was, of course, a descendant of Lord Amschel Rothschild, but more importantly, he was a Zionist to the core and professed it openly. And
before you go further, I want to go ahead and put this out there before anybody starts getting things twisted, right? Zionism and Judaism
two different
things.
Majorly different.
And you see a lot of talking points and whatnot saying that if you are anti-Zionist, it means that you hate Jews.
And that's not true at all.
That is not true. That is absolutely not true. Right. And that is something that has been...
Anti-Semite.
Yes, it's just like... Right. So before we go on here, nothing that we say here tonight is anti-Jewish.
No, not at all. Okay, as a matter of fact,
Zionism is a political ideology.
Yes, it is.
It's right.
Very well.
Right. So I want people to understand this.
And there's a reason behind it. You guys need to know what the differences are so that you can understand why the Arab world is truly upset. So, I'm going to put some photographs up of some news articles. And the first thing, before I put that up, I want to preface that with the Holocaust. The Holocaust most certainly happened. So much to the point that Eisenhower himself said, hey, look, man, we got to go in here and we have to take thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures and document this like you've never documented anything before, because there will be people that say this didn't happen.
Exactly. And yes, and to, you know, any of you idiots out there that claim it didn't happen, I mean,
ridiculous.
Ridiculous. And yes, I mean, even our good buddy Popeye, his grandmother experienced the Holocaust.
Absolutely.
Firsthand. Yes, she had the tattoo. So yes, it absolutely did occur.
Happen. Now, where you go off the rails and where you create a problem, and the reason why you have Holocaust deniers, all centers around the number 6 million. 6 million is the entire reason why they're able to present an argument, when in fact that number was used in a PR campaign by the Rothschild family and supporters of these organizations that Edmund de Rothschild created and his surrogates. It brought about the second nation state of Israel, but the way he did it pissed off the Palestinians, at that time, the Palestine, and it was really kind of like boiling frogs. Almost kind of like what you saw in the build up to this and everything else, where no one really made any mention of it. Nobody really said anything about it.
And what you'll see is that 6 million number was thrown around way before the Holocaust.
This is important. Right. This is why there is question over whether it happened, but more importantly, a lot of the hatred towards the nation state, this nation state of Israel, because to them it's apostate and shouldn't exist. And if you go by biblical history, technically it shouldn't exist. But the Rothschild family brought it about. Now, what does that say? Does that say those people don't have a right to exist? Of course not. Of course not. But what it says is that you're not being told the truth about how things came about. And therein lies the rub, because you can't understand the other side's anger when, in fact, this has been a bone of contention for 150 years.
Look, this is the baseline that everybody has been taught, right? Okay, it was World War II, Hitler killed Jews. After World War II, the Jews deserved their own state because of the atrocities that they suffered at the hands of Hitler, right? That's the base level of how people understand that the state of Israel.
If you even get that out of people these days.
You don't even really get taught about World War II anymore. So, right. So even even that, right. But people don't understand that this idea of establishing a Jewish state of Israel,
it goes back a very long way.
This was long in the works before World War II. Right. And that's what Joe is about to get into and show everybody.
So check this out. I'm going to put it on my screen, and I apologize in advance for the eye buggery that's going to happen from it. But just here we go.
That's fine.
Okay,
so travel through the vortex.
And I'm going to go full screen here, and we're going to start with this article here. Now, this is from The Sun, 1915, June 4th. And I'll try and zone in on this a little bit. And it says, M. Malikoff, Minister of the Interior, editor of the day. Since the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people have had no darker page in their history than that which the Russian government is writing today. 6 million Jews, one half the Jew people throughout the world, are being persecuted, hounded, humiliated, tortured, and starved. Thousands of them have been slaughtered. Dear brethren, have mercy on the 6 million Jews. Okay, so there you go. There's one. Now,
and what year was this?
This was 1915.
Oh, see? Okay.
Okay, so there's one. Let me go to another one. Let's see here. This is the Jewish Chronicle, 1896. A solution of the Jewish question. But we can do nothing without the enthusiasm of our own nation. The idea must make its way into the most distant, miserable holes where our peoples dwell. They will awaken from gloomy brooding, for into their lives will come a new significance. Let each of them but think of himself and what vast proportions the movement must assume. Now, this, of course, is a movement brought about by Baron Edmund de Rothschild. And what glory awaits those who fight unselfishly for the cause. A wondrous generation of Jews will spring into existence. The Maccabeans will rise again, and so it will be. It is the poor and the simple who do not know what power man already exercises over the forces of nature. It's just these who will have hope of the tiniest faith in the new message, for these have never lost hope of the promised land. So this is here basically making that it becomes a movement, and the Jewish Chronicle was heavily funded by the Rothschilds. Then you have all these. This is the New York Times, and what you'll see in this are Holocaust and 6 million Jews stories brought to you basically since 1869, and with the idea of pushing that need for that nation state. But just like you see in the mainstream media, all the news stations saying the exact same wording every time. So it is with this and 6 million Jews, that number 6 million. So as this is happening, right, you see all these articles going from 1869 to 1906. And then if you look here, I got more. Oh boy, Jewish population of 6 million, 6 million. The 6 million Jews of Russia, December 1911, 6 million, 14, 6 million Jews, January 14th, 1915, 6 million Jews. What is this? $1 billion fund to rebuild Jewry. I mean, this is in the New York Times, folks. 6 million Jews will need help to resume normal life when war ended. Ukrainian Jews aim to stop pogroms. The sad plight of the Ukrainian Jews. Hoover pleads for the Jews, asking 7.5 million for Europeans needy 6 million people in Central and Eastern Europe. So you see, it keeps going on, and it's 6 million, 6 million, 6 million, 6 million. When you ask about the amount of deaths in World War II, they'll tell you 6 million. But that's not the truth. And that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But what it means is there's a narrative that's being told, but you're not being told what really happened that led up to this. So let's get into that. To do that, let me share my screen here. I want to show you 1917, and that's the Balfour Declaration. That's something that's very, well, let's just say not well known in people's repertoire of history. But it was a pretty important thing that happened that laid the groundwork for the second nation state of Israel. And
luckily
had everything to do with it.
Luckily, in my History 3 class in college, we learned about the Balfour.
That's excellent.
Declaration.
More than a century on the Balfour Declaration explained. Now, I'm going to Al Jazeera. Why? Because I want you to get the other side of the story. Because you need to get the other side of the story to understand why they're so upset. So, this is from November 1918. The Balfour Declaration, which resulted in a significant upheaval in the lives of Palestinians, was issued on November 2nd, 1917. The declaration turned the Zionist aim of establishing a Jewish state in Palestine into reality when Britain publicly pledged to establish a national home for the Jewish people there. The pledge is generally viewed as one of the main catalysts of the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948, and the conflict that ensued with the Zionist state of Israel. It is regarded as one of the most controversial and contested documents in the modern history of the Arab world and has puzzled historians for decades. The Balfour Declaration was a public pledge by Britain to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The statement came in the form of a letter from Britain's then Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, addressed to Lionel Walter Rothschild, a figurehead of the British Jewish community. Now, Lionel Walter Rothschild is really a descendant of Edmund. So understand that Edmund started this and his progeny has been taking it over. Remember, these control freaks play the long game. They know it. It's multi-generational power and money that you're talking about here. And they're not
my progeny will continue my work and so on and so on.
That's right. So it was made during World War I, and it included the terms of the British Mandate for Palestine after the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. The so-called mandate system set up by the Allied powers was thinly veiled form of colonialism and occupation. Absolutely. The system transferred rule from the territories that were previously controlled by the powers defeated in the war, being Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria to the victors. The declared aim of the mandate was to allow the winners of the war to administer the newly emerging states until they become independent. No different than we did with Japan. When we defeated Japan, we went, wow, Matthew Perry died. Wow, how do you like that? Oh man, all those Friends people are going to be shocked. The case of Palestine, however, was unique. So it says, unlike the rest of the post-war mandates, the main goal of the British mandate, there was to create the conditions for the establishment of a Jewish national home, where Jews constituted less than 10% of the population at the time. So upon the start of the mandate, the British began to facilitate the immigration of European Jews to Palestine. So between 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population rose from 9% to 27%. Hence the reason why you saw 6 million, 6 million, 6 million, 6 million Russian Jews, Ukrainian Jews, European Jews suffering, this and that, starting in 1869, all with the intent led by the Rothschild family, because the Rothschild wanted that secular power. They wanted to be able to project their power as a government. It's the one thing they didn't have. And you have to remember, the Bible does not sanction this iteration of the nation state of Israel. When the second temple was destroyed, it was finished. And God's favor went to the Gentiles. And ever since then, it's not supposed to be. It's an apostate state. And that's why the other side see it so harshly and take such offense to it, because it's not what you think it is, but it's a way for the Rothschild family to be able to project their power from a government side of things, not just a banking side of things, that they had that power, and then they were able to bring about a nation state that practiced the politics of Zionism. And that's really what that is. It's a politic. And so
it's an ideological belief.
Exactly. So now people might say, well, that can't be true. I mean, after all, you're getting it from Al Jazeera, right? I mean, that can't be true. Okay. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, well, if that doesn't convince you, I'm going to go over to a very, very interesting source that I just so happened to find today. And I want to share it with you because even I was surprised that a family would just go ahead and put it out there like that. So where am I? This is the Rothschild Archive. And any of you that are interested in learning about the Rothschild family as far as what they want to put out there and project, this is their site. And boy, are they proud. Why are they proud? Well, because they own probably 80% of the world. So they are like super proud of themselves. And so this is their repository.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Right.
This is
their journal of their family and their stuff and things and success and everything else. And I'm going to bring this to your attention. Baron Edmund de Rothschild in Palestine. It says, until his death in 1934, Baron Edmund de Rothschild provided support for Jewish colonists, overseeing dozens of new colonies and earning the name the Benefactor. He was the youngest son of James and Betty de Rothschild. He was bore the Hebrew name Benjamin. He was born in 1845. Edmund joined the Paris banking house in 1868, became a director of the EST Railroad Company and other family concerns, making journeys to Bukhara to examine the potential of oil fields in the area, and devoting himself to art, culture, and philanthropic interests. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Of course, you know, the important things. So he marries Adelheid in 1877, and the daughter of Wilhelm Karl Rothschild. So here's the other thing, too, is interestingly enough, a lot of inbrededness, lots of it in this. That's why you normally see, like with wars, like World War I, it was cousins that were fighting each other, you know, Britain and Germany and things like that. And it's really a family affair. And bloodlines mean something, especially in the world of the control freaks. It means everything. So he, being a strong supporter of Zionism, again, Rothschild,
straight from their own mouths,
achievements were involved in responding to the threats facing the Jewish people in Europe in the late 19th century by supporting massive land purchases and underwriting Jewish settlements in Palestine and Israel. So even before the Balfour Accords, he was laying the groundwork for this because he knew it was coming. It was just a matter of time. They play the long game. And
he was buying land. He was setting up. He was prepping the ground per se for all of this to occur at some point. He was setting the stage.
And this is why I showed you the news articles first, because the funding for these articles and all of these groups were funded by Edmund, and Edmund's large donations lent significant support to the movement during its early years, which you saw, which helped lead the establishment of the State of Israel. In the 1880s, in his goal for the establishment of a Jewish homeland, Edmund's philanthropy funded Jewish settlements and encouraged the development of agriculture and industry. The Benefactor, as he was known, provided support for Jewish colonists, overseeing dozens of new colonies. Rishon LeZion, the first in Zion, was followed by others bearing the names of his parents. Edmund stimulated the economic development of the settlements by investing in new crops such as wine, grapefruit, avocado, and industry enterprises like silk production. He played a key role in Israel's wine industry. Under the supervision of his administrators in Ottoman Palestine, farm colonies and vineyards were established, and two major wineries were opened in Rishon LeZion and Zikaron Yaakov. Edmund paid his first visit to the colony in 1887 to inspect the progress, and that had been made for the first 5 years. So right there you can see there is a big problem with the encroachment in Palestine. And post-World War I, spoils of war is the perfect opportunity for Rothschild to flex his muscle. Why? Because UK was broke. And he had all the notes. And guess what? That gives him a significant leverage and power over the government and the ability to force this type of accord into existence. Now, he can't create a nation state, but he could get it in writing that this territory, almost like we used to do for the Indians, right? We would go and displace them, and then it would be called the Northwestern Territory, right? And then eventually you would have Kansas Territory, and then it would become
he set up a pretty
right?
much like a pseudo state that wasn't
Yeah.
officially recognized as a
groundwork.
country, but it was very close.
That's right. So understand that he was the guy responsible for all of the problems that you see today relating to modern day Israel, because it was Edmund that created it and then brought it about, leveraging all that money the British government owed him to bring about the Balfour Accord. And that was not, of course, fair to the Palestinians. What did they do? They didn't do anything. They just lost the war. But in warfare, this is what happens. And this is what I am trying to make sure everybody understands and sees, is that when these things happen, the world changes. It impacts everybody, and it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. And I shudder to think, with the divisive society we have now, and people so dependent on the government for their sustenance and a standard of living, let's just say, when that standard can't be met, that is going to cause a lot of upheaval in society. And I hope, and quite frankly, I think they know that, which is why they need a unifying war. They need something that they're going to get people behind, but in reality, all it's doing is setting us up for that control, the basically AI managed society. It won't start that way, but it will migrate that way. And they've already tested it. They've beta tested it with the elections. They saw how far they can censor. They saw how encouraging that technology is, and how much it can grow and flourish if, especially if AI manages it. Their facility in Buffdale really gave them a lot of that too. And I truly believe that facility probably houses the closest thing to AGI that there is. I truly believe that, where when you're talking about aggregating all of that metadata and all of those communications, and that AI just having a field day with it and just gobbling it all up. I shudder to think of intelligence.
It's like the sentient world simulation on steroids, right? Where everybody's a node in the simulation, but now it has all this metadata that it can scrape through, and just it's wild, man. And so
it's absolutely wild.
So now we have the complexities of what's going on geopolitically, and now you've got AI thrown into the mix, and things are looking wild. That's all.
Right. So now, how does this go? Right, and this is the issue that you run into. You don't know how it goes. And right. I would never try to.
And how do you solve it? Because I don't see an easy way to solve any of this.
No, because
right?
people always try to take the easy way out. That's the problem. Humanity shows that most like to stick their heads in the sand. Most try to survive, but most are overcome by fear, and most don't really want to be that point person. Right? You don't want to be that one, because your risk is heightened. Your life is going to change. All of these things come about, but let me tell you, folks, it's going to be so bad that men's hearts will fail them. It says, for what's coming. I mean, it's going to suck so bad and be so scary that buckle up. And
right,
if you can't see the writing on the wall, I don't know what to say. However, you don't have to go in it with your pants down. You can actually do some things to help educate yourself as far as how you're going to manage it up here and in here. I'd say physically, prep. But I learned a long time ago you can prep for the best laid plans. I'll just put it that way.
You need to make sure that you are really squared away mentally and spiritually for what's coming.
That is probably the most important preparation.
Yeah.
That I
once you do that, then preparing physically and whatnot, that's fine.
That becomes
you'll be able to handle it.
Taken care of. Don't worry about it. That kind of thing. And if
Right,
you don't,
right.
well, then guess what? You just fast forward to the end. Hot dog. So now, why do I say that? Well, because there's been some interesting. Now, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it's the sun." It may be the sun that's saying it, but it's significant in my world, and in your world too, because the guy that originally discovered Noah's Ark was he died of cancer probably 10 to 15 years ago by a guy by the name of Ron Wyatt. And he's discovered a lot of things. But this is significant if this goes mainstream because that is biblically significant. Because, one of the things in prophecy is that these secrets will start to manifest and become known, and that information will spread to all the corners of the earth, which with the technology we have, oh brother, can it ever? So take a look at this. Now this is in Turkey, and it says Noah Way. I love it. Has Noah's Ark been found? Ruins and boat-shaped mound date back to the time of the biblical flood, archaeologists reveal. There is a great documentary. Anybody that wants to learn more about that subject and you don't want to read about it, a guy by the name of Del Tackett did a marvelous documentary rather, called Is Genesis History? And if you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. I suggest you watch it just to understand. That'll give you kind of a baseline as far as the biblical side of the flood. There's a scientific side of the flood too. Remember, they complement each other. They don't compete. Science and spirituality, science and the Bible, they don't compete. They complement. So you got science and you got history, and they bring it together in that documentary about the flood. Noah's Ark has always been controversial because there's been so many different people that have claimed different locations. But biblically, this location fits the description that's not only found in the Bible, but also in the Sumerian Kings list. And that's important because what you'll find in the Sumerian Kings list and the epics of Gilgamesh is that Nimrod and Gilgamesh would actually have correspondence with the king of Ararat. And the king of Ararat was Noah. Of course, he's a lot older now. But he would send his messengers up and down the mountains of Ararat to go talk to the king of Ararat. And the king of Ararat, he came in the boat. And Gilgamesh was a descendant of Ham. Gilgamesh being the son of Nimrod. Nimrod being basically a Nephilim, which is half man, half God. And that's why you had giants on the earth and everything else. It's all real, folks. This is the crazy thing. So here it is. Ruins and boat-shaped mound date back to the time. Okay, so here it is. Now, this is in a lot of people, when you read the Bible, your Bible stories, or you see it, they think that, oh, yes, he landed on Mount Ararat. It's not Mount Ararat. The right translation is the mountains of Ararat. And that's where Noah's Ark is, in the exact spot it said it landed. Now, if you take a look here, this is a 3D scan, and you can see the timbers and the cross sections and everything else. It is a man-made structure. It has partially collapsed due to an earthquake but the original aerial photos show more of a proper teardrop shape all around. They've also found animal droppings. They found different things that make it pretty doggone convincing that it's man-made, right? So this is the sun putting it out, and, you know, it being the sun, there would probably be a little bit of, oh my God, you know, it's like Bat Boy or something like that. But would you know that this structure actually fits the biblical measurements to a T, both diameter and length? And the insides, the structure, some of it is, what do you call it? Fossilized, but it's unbelievable. They're finding animal droppings, things like that. It's crazy. So here you go. Noah's Ark. Now, this is my next, our next stop is the Wyatt Museum. And again, I told you, Ron Wyatt was the first one to really kind of go in and study this location from the get-go. And the Wyatt Museum now is being visited by a lot of Hollywood stars. I think they're starting to understand, like, holy crap, this stuff is actually real. And it blew my mind. I'm going to try and find the last one. It was a lady from Saturday Night Live. You'll all know if you saw her. But anyway, this is the Wyatt, and you can go, it's called WyattMuseum.com. It's a Wyatt Archaeological Research, and his wife runs it now. Ron Wyatt passed away a long time ago. But Noah's Ark has been around for a long time. This is the picture. Let's see if I can bring it up so you guys can see it in the early years. This is what it looked like before the earthquake. Right here. Big teardrop. Right? This is 1960. And this was this picture that was taken. It says, in 1960, 27-year-old Ron Wyatt, along with thousands of other people, read an article in Life magazine about a strange boat-shaped formation in the mountains of Ararat. Noah's Ark was the question. And of course, you know, everybody's like, blah, no way. Can't be. 7,000 feet in the midst of crevasses and landside debris, the explorers found a clear grassy area shaped like a ship and rimmed with steep, packed earth sides. Its dimensions are close to those given in Genesis. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. So that's 450 by 75 by 45 feet. A quick 2-day survey revealed no sign that the object was man-made, yet a scientist in the group said nothing in nature could create such a symmetrical shape. A thorough excavation may be another year to solve the mystery, he said. So Ron goes and wants to do it, and he does it. And he goes out, and this is his file of everything that he did. And it's a great read, and everybody should read it because it's an amazing story. But that's not the only story. It's an amazing story. And he publishes all his scientific research, fibers from Noah's Ark, laminated wood, you know, who decides if it's the ark? But that's not it. So if you go to his other actual discoveries, Red Sea crossing, Sodom and Gomorrah, Mount Sinai. Really? The Ark of the Covenant, you say? So there's all sorts of different things that he discovered. You want to see the
we just recently had, was it mainstream science, you know, confirm the location of Sodom and Gomorrah, and
that's correct, and it's exactly where he found it. And I mean, it's nuts if you start looking into how this all came about. It is unbelievable that he pushed back so hard. I mean, this guy, it was a highly respected guy, but all his research, it just went nowhere. It was not really, oh, it can't be. Oh, come on, you know? So I want to see who that last. They have interesting visitors to their museum all the time, and I think it's great. Let me see if I can find it. Wyatt. I don't think it's this one. Let's see. Wyatt Museum SNL.
It is really interesting.
Victoria Jackson.
Ah.
So here, I'm going to give you a little. I'm going to give you a little taste of this because this is very, very. It's starting to get mainstream attention in a huge, huge way. So let's do this. I'm going to play a little bit for you so you can understand exactly where this is going. It's exploding, and this is very prophetical. I mean, if you ask me that this is happening now, it really is really interesting. So here we go. Check it out.
I am so excited. I met Freddie, the photographer, and he told me that he knew Ron Wyatt's widow. Ron, now my hobby is biblical archaeology, and I was looking at YouTube and I saw Ron Wyatt discovered Noah's Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was telling all these facts. I'm like, why doesn't everyone know? Well, this is his widow, Mary Nell.
Hi.
And she is keeping his legacy going, showing groups and people like me who are like so excited because I'm studying the Old Testament now. It brings it to life. Let's start with Noah's Ark. But okay, first of all, Randall, you showed me these rugs.
Okay, at the Noah's Ark site there in Turkey, close to Dubazit, there's a village where the people make rugs that are only made in this little village close to Noah's Ark. And there were 7 clean animals and 2 unclean animals taken onto the ark. And so the rug has 5 and 2, so 7 and 2. And they have the animals that are on this silk woven rug that a lady could only weave. I went over and saw the lady weaving, and they could only weave 2 hours a day because their eyes in this low lit room, that's all they could take.
And that beautiful one over there.
And then we have another one here that's longer, and it's the same deal. It has the animals. It's the only place in Turkey that makes rugs with animals on it.
I'm here in the home of Mary Nell and Randall, and there is a museum hidden here. And it is showing artifacts from the Holy Land, from Noah's Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, and Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, Ron Wyatt is on YouTube talking about this, but here are all of his photographs, and they're going to tell us about it. How did he and why did he suddenly go to Turkey?
He saw this article in Life magazine where it said Noah's Ark, boat-like form seen near Ararat. That was in 1960. And they took these pictures because they were looking for missile bases, the military was during the Cold War. And they said, this is not a natural object. So a group of archaeologists and researchers went out there in 1960 and they blew holes in it with dynamite, but they came away with the conclusion that there was nothing there of any archaeological interest. But he believed they might be wrong because, like I was telling you earlier, Vicki, he knew that Moses had written the book of Genesis, and the book of Genesis gave us the measurements of the ark, 300 royal Egyptian cubits. And the article said it was close to about 500 feet. So he wanted to check it out. And when he finally measured it, it was 515 feet, exactly 300 royal Egyptian cubits. That attracted his attention.
And he was an anesthesiologist who spent his hard-earned personal money to go over there with his sons and start poking around. And a lot of people thought Noah's Ark was on Mount Ararat, but Ron had a theory that was different.
When Ron first went there, the ark, it was even with the ground. It, the sides were pushed up a bit, but it looked like this. And Ron came home and got some of his friends to pray for an earthquake out there because he said, this is so big, And how am I going to be able to even tell what it is? So, they prayed for it. Here's before the earthquake, here's after. It dropped the soil around the sides. And what Ron saw was he believed these were rib timbers, which led him to conclude that Noah probably cannibalized the ship for wood for a number of years.
What is this that he found right there?
Okay. When Ron first went out there, before he ever saw the ark, he found this village with all of these, looked like tombstones in them. And as he got close to them, he realized that they had a hole at the top of them and that they were all pretty much the same size. They were all about 10 foot tall. They were different shapes, but they had a hole, and the hole was scooped out in the middle, and he immediately thought these were drogue stones. Noah's Ark was a free-floating object. It did not need an anchor stone, but by using drogue stones on it, they would hold the nose into the waves, and the ones on the side would keep it from doing this. So he found those first, and they are in a line many miles away from the ark.
In the Bible, it says that the Noah's Ark landed on the mountains, plural,
in the
of Ararat.
Yeah.
In the mountains, plural, not on Mount Ararat.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're 15 miles away from Mount Ararat on the mountains of Ararat.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up, because the Bible, whatever the Bible says.
This is 8:4 is
Yeah.
where we find that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what was his second thing he discovered?
Okay, after he went to Noah's Ark and discovered that there wasn't much he could do, he came back home, and the next year, at that time, he and the boys packed up and they flew to Israel, and they drove all the way down to the end of Israel to the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, and hired a pilot to fly them down the Gulf of Aqaba to see if he could find where the crossing of the Red Sea took place. This is Canaan right here, Israel.
Mm-hmm.
This is, in the Bible, this is referred to as the wilderness of the Red Sea because it's between the two fingers of the Red Sea. The Red Sea is massive. It comes down like this. And so Ron flew into Jerusalem way up here, got a car, drove down here, rented a pilot and a plane, and he flew them all the way down this coast. And what he found was Nueva, Egypt. And this right here, that's 10 miles long, that is a beach easily able to handle 1 million people at least, and their flocks and herds. And so that is where he found chariot parts.
Oh, he found Roman.
He
found Egyptian chariot parts.
Right.
In the water?
In the water. Yeah.
That were, why isn't anyone looking for this stuff?
Well, you can't take it out. This area right here is a protected coral area, and you cannot bring anything out of the water. And so this was a gold wheel that he found in 88, but all of the others that they found, the only thing that's really left is the shape of a wheel, because where the coral attaches to anything that's organic, it eats it up, but forms a shell around it. So it's just like a fossil. We recognize a fossil by the shape, and we recognize
the shape of an Egyptian chariot wheel.
Well, right in the middle, it actually goes down. It's about 2,500 feet deep here.
Wow.
Either end, it drops down to over 5,000 feet, just an immediate drop.
So didn't God tell Moses where to walk? Was it tapping a rock or something?
Well, he told him to stand there and hold his rod up. And when he did that, the waters parted.
And what was this? I remember.
It was interesting when he first came here and went to the south end of the beach. That is south, this is north. He found this column lying in the water, and he told the Israeli police or maybe it was Army, about the column, and they immediately moved it across the road out of the way and preserved it. And what he later found was one on the opposite shore in Saudi Arabia. This one had, because it laid in the water, all the inscriptions were gone. But the one on the other side had the inscriptions. And when they saw that it was in Hebrew, the Saudis removed it. But he believes that King Solomon erected those in honor of the crossing of the sea on dry
that's
land.
right.
Yeah.
So he believes King Solomon erected these as this is the spot
This is the spot.
where
Yes.
God parted the Red Sea.
That's what it said on the Saudi side.
Mhm.
That's what it said. in
The writing, the Hebrew writing on the other pillar.
When Ron
Yeah. So I suggest you go to, if you want to go to the real, get all his notes and all that, check out the WyattMuseum.com, because that will give you a vector to be able to understand the conflicts and what's going on in its totality. It'll give you both sides of things. It'll give it to you from the Hebrew side, the Jewish side. It'll give it to you from the other side. So, and it all boils down to this. You had two diverging paths from Abraham. You had Isaac, who was his son with Sarah, his wife, and then you had Ishmael, who he had with his servant, because Sarah thought she was barren. And it turns out that, she wasn't. And because Ishmael was kind of the bastard child, Sarah forced him to say, you got to go now. And so Ishmael created what we know now as the modern Muslim world. All stems from that rebellion. And Isaac went on to father the Jewish world, and Judaism. So it's all the same family. That's the funny thing, is that, but that's right. One's based on a promise and the other's on a rebellion. So
yep, it's wild.
It's a wild story, but you have to understand it to understand it in its true context, and understand why everybody's so pissed in the Arab world, and understand also why it's being pushed so hard, because you have a family, a controlling family, that put so much time, effort, and money into this nation state, and they're not going to let it go easy. It's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, it'll be a catalyst, if anything, to change society, because a war like that redefines the world. It redefines the world. If you look at World War I, it was the League of Nations. World War II, it's the United Nations. World War III, what does it bring?
The global New World Order.
New World Order? Who knows? What are they going to call it?
Who knows? Right. The Great Reset.
The Great Reset? Well, what do you call it after you hit the reset? That's the question,
right?
So just food for thought, but history will tell you what the truth is, and then you can make a sound decision. And how you process it and how you prepare for it spiritually first. Because if you don't do that, you're in for a rude awakening. All the preparation in the world ain't going to help you, not one bit. Yeah, the whole digital money thing. Oh man, it's got Angie's in a tizzy over it, because once they do that, they track, they control, they can fricking cut it off. It doesn't matter. Housing. Why do you think housing's out of control? It's all done by design. But we're out of time, I think, right?
Yep.
It looks like it. Well, we're out of time, folks. So have a great night. And again, support KGRA. Go to kgradb.com today, get a membership, and support us. And let's make this grow. Have a good night, everybody. See you next week.